Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
All right, JP Finlay joins us, of course, Commanders insider for NBC4, host of the Beltway Football Podcast, and a little show called B. Mitch and Finlay over on 106.7 The Fan, 10A to 2P. JP, are you excited, scared, or both for 106.7 The Fan versus the Team 980 Live?
I don't really know what it is yet. And I'm the CK's email really helped me understand. Like, if we're arm wrestling or something, I don't really know who I want from your place. But if we're just hanging out and having a good time, I'm ready.
I mean, come on. If that's
you're a trainer and everything. You're like low-key Jack. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're saying, I don't know who I'd want from your place, yeah, to win, or if you're saying you have to compete, and you're like, you don't want to compete against me. Was that meant to be insulting is basically what I'm asking.
I was trying to compliment you.
Oh, okay.
Myself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, all right. Well, we'll allow that, obviously.
Somebody, it'd probably be Russell.
Okay. Well,
But he's a big fella.
Yeah, I think we could coach him up over on our side to use some leverage, and we could probably get some things done. So,
Let me be clear. I like the 106.7 side as a team. Between B, I put B Mitch up against everybody, and then
yes,
I think
he's our
Bickle
problem.
Bickle still got a little strength to him. I think Bishop might still have a little strength to him. I think we can take our chances.
You guys also have 2.5 times the amount of players, if you will. Fortunately, though, for all of us, we are not actually competing in anything. We're just going to be talking about football, and there's no censors. So that's kind of really where I was going to with are you excited or are you scared? Because the FCC has no control, and neither does anybody else, including probably our boss.
Well, and I assume there'll be alcohol served at this event?
Yeah, probably. I think if there's not, that won't stop people from consuming it.
Yeah, I'm excited then. And, dude, that's a home game for me. I feel like all these events are always in Virginia or downtown. This is in Bethesda. That thing's like 5-10 minutes from my house. That's
also true. That's a mega win for you. Again, February 2nd. It's a Friday, 8 p.m. You can go to Bethesda Theater, their website, for all of the ticketing information. It's going to be a really good time. We'll be out chopping it up on stage. It'll be great. As for the news of the current moment, JP, we heard all the reporting earlier today. Rap had it first, and then you and Nikki and everybody quickly confirmed that we are down to 2, Ian Cunningham and Adam Peters, as the lead candidates, the finalists for this front office position. What can you flesh that out for us? Like, how did we get to these two, and what are they looking at in terms of structure and timeline to get this done?
Well, I think we've already seen that Josh Harris is kind of sticking to his word of the thorough but rapid search here. This thing's moving fast. Frankly, I think it's wrapped up before next weekend. The date I had set on it all along was next Wednesday, which is fairly arbitrary, but it was just kind of me doing some mental math and, combined with some things I know. I think this is a really exciting time for Commanders fans. And I get the folks that want to be apprehensive and say, oh, it's just another rebuild. We've been through a ton of these. But to me, this is different. These are the 2 hottest young names out there as far as talent evaluators and team builders. And the fact that, Cunningham last year turned down a job with the Cardinals, turned down their general manager job. And Peters has said no to multiple teams that have asked him to interview. So these are people with leverage and options, and they are choosing to go through this process with Washington. And I think it's fair to say, at least on some level, they're now competing with each other to get the job. And so, frankly, I think Peters is probably the leader. I think Peters is probably the favorite to land this. I think Peters is the guy they wanted. But I bet Cunningham's really impressed them. There's that clip that, I don't know if viral is the right word, but at least it, football circles, that clip of him explaining the marriage of analytics and scouting from one of those conferences earlier this year, I think really kind of maybe boosted his profile. I think the way the Bears have handled, the draft and whether or not they become a dominant team, at least they are accumulating picks and putting themselves in position to succeed. And then if you look at Cunningham's track record prior to that with the Eagles and the Ravens, and Peters with the Niners and the Pats before that, like these are hot ticket personnel evaluators, and this is a really exciting time for Washington.
No doubt about it. JP Finlay, B. Mitch and Finlay, of course, 106.7 The Fan with us here on the Hoffman Show. The fantasy idea is that you get them both somehow, that because they're both assistants right now, assistant GMs, you could put Peters in some kind of executive role, VP, president, executive VP, and still give Cunningham a boost to GM and somehow land them both. Is that remotely feasible?
Remotely feasible, yes. I don't know how realistic it is. I don't know who wants the top job. You know what I mean? Like, if Cunningham just turned down a top job, is he going to take a not top job here? And honestly, I don't know those. Like, I'm throwing out those questions.
Right.
And here's the one hesitation I can see for either guy. Say it's Peters who gets the head of football ops and Cunningham takes the GM role. And this could definitely happen. Like, I'm not ruling it out. But the one natural question for me is the rules of the NFL, it's a lot more relaxed on the talent evaluator, GM, executive side than it is on the coaching side. The coaching side has a lot more restrictive procedures involved every offseason. But the one kind of big rule when it comes to the talent evaluator stuff is they can't say no. Like your home club, your employer club,
right,
cannot say no if somebody requests an interview as long as it's for a promotion, right? But if Cunningham comes here and he's GM, and the structure at a lot of other teams is that their lead guy is a GM, then all of a sudden it's not a promotion. And if he wanted to leave, he wouldn't be able to. So and they can come up with different titles and dress this up a million different ways. These are the two hottest young candidates, and both have turned down other jobs. I'm just not sure I see them both coming here to work together. That doesn't mean it might not happen. It doesn't mean the Harris Group doesn't have juice on a level that we haven't seen in Washington in a long time. I kind of question it.
No, I agree. And I think it's much more on, like, why would Cunningham do that? If he's going to be the lead candidate for multiple jobs, why would he settle for being number 2 here? I guess the only reason I could come up with when I kind of did this mental exercise earlier is if he comes up at the end of this and is like, I don't really like any of these, and staying in Chicago is a bad idea because Poles is probably going to get whacked after this year unless things go perfectly. Maybe I should just go be the number 2 somewhere with some more stability. And then my next raise is going to be to that VP level anyway. So that's kind of the only scenario I could think of. But to me, like, the answers to all the questions you ask would lead to him not winding. Like, the needle that has to be thread there doesn't feel like it's very likely to be threaded.
I tend to agree. I'm not saying it won't happen. I don't know. I've asked, and I haven't really gotten a real answer. But it just doesn't. If it's how often it just doesn't seem plausible to me. Like flip this to the coaching search, which is where I guess we're going next. And if the two hottest candidates are Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald, and Ben Johnson gets the job, do you think McDonald's also going to come
right
to be the DC?
Some of my YouTube commenters sure do. They're all in on that, and I'm like, you guys should look at how the rules work in lateral moves. No, I agree with you 100%. JP Finlay with us here on the Hoffman Show. So here's the last question I want to ask on this, JP, and I've really honestly just been thinking about this the last couple of minutes as we've been talking, so we can kind of flesh this out together if you want. Is there, with the quarterback situation being what it is and the number 2 pick being in play, is there one of these guys that gets a certain bump up or down because of that? Because we know that decision is the most consequential one for the next half decade at least of this franchise. That experiences that they have drafting quarterbacks and what their resume is on quarterback development should give either one of them particularly a boost. Or even if you want to get a little conspiratorial, the fact that the team that actually controls the draft one slot ahead of you is the Bears, where Cunningham is coming from. And do you get a little inside info if you hire him?
I don't think so, because I don't think, and specific to the Cunningham's with the Bears have the first overall pick. How much info is there right now?
Yeah, I don't know that they made up their mind yet. So,
right, maybe he knows if they really are going to trade Fields or not. But NFL front office executives are going to know that pretty soon anyway.
Right.
Certainly by late February, when they're doing all their scouting at the combine anyway, it'll be a known entity. And I mean, to me, all right, so I think the quarterback at number 2 question has a greater impact on the head coach selection than it does necessarily on the evaluator. But if you want to paint this broadly, Adam Peters and the Niners, you can point to the success of Brock Purdy, and they were smart enough to take that kid at Mr. Irrelevant, or you can point to the Trey Lance trade, and that was a disaster. And I'm just thinking Cunningham this year, he's part of a front office that maybe he's considering keeping Fields when you have all these quarterback options available. You could point to the fact that he was in Philly when they drafted, I believe, I don't have the calendar in front of me, I believe he was in Philly when they drafted Jalen Hurts, which looks great. But I also believe he was in Philly when they gave Carson Wentz a huge extension. So, the problem with talent evaluators is there's always going to be some hits and there's always going to be some misses. Now, the really good ones have a ton of hits and a few misses, and that the hits are able to overcome the misses. That's what I want them to build in Washington, is San Fran went all in, traded away a ton of capital to go get Trey Lance, realized he wasn't a guy, basically cut him. They traded him away to a serious rival of theirs in the Cowboys and are still the 1 seed. That's when you know you've built something.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, and thank you for shooting down the conspiracy theory in my head to start that answer. But I think more importantly,
maybe you're right.
I mean, look, if we were a lot closer to the draft, maybe it couldn't hurt to have some familiarity with their thinking. But I think what you said. Go ahead.
If it was mid-March or something, I think you might be onto something.
Yeah.
But this early in the game, I think. And, dude, people don't make changes like that in mid-March, and there's a reason.
For sure.
In 5 weeks.
Well, and then the other part that you said that I think I want to underline for people is the job. Everyone thinks the job is you got to be the best scout. You're up there at the combine with your binoculars, and it's actually one of the best things you could be as a general manager is a reporter / a secret agent. Your job is to know stuff, and so. While yes, Cunningham would have the upper hand on knowing what the Bears are thinking if he comes from the Bears. If Peters is as good at his job as everyone thinks he is, he's also going to know. And then the other thing too about kind of the resumes that I think is interesting is, maybe Cunningham was in the room when they gave Wentz the extension, screaming not to give him the extension. You just don't know when these front offices operate like this. You know that obviously the top decision maker signs off on that stuff, but I have a feeling we're probably going to hear about a bunch of moves in the next couple of weeks that, for instance, Marty Herney or Martin Mayhew didn't like, but Ron Rivera did anyway.
Right. And I mean, I can tell you for sure, I know people in that room didn't want to take Forbes over
Gonzalez.
That the Pats picked right behind him. I know there were people in the room that didn't want that. And I think there's been a fair amount of politicking already of Herney trying to distance himself from Ron and people are pointing to Mayhew as GM and it's those are the titles for sure, but that's not exactly how I've seen everything shake out. But largely I think that's going to be irrelevant because everybody's getting replaced.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, last thing real quick with JP Finlay, of course, Commanders insider for NBC4 and host of B. Mitch and Finlay over on 106.7 The Fan. As you mentioned, yes, the coaching search. We know they've put in a bunch of requests. By the time they can actually do interviews, are we pretty sure that this front office person is going to be in place to be a part of that process, and how will they impact that process?
Oh, dude, absolutely. Yes. Do I think they'll be in place for interviews? Yes. I think they're in place next week. And how will they shape that process? I think it's going to be their process. Now, I think everybody's going to be involved, but I think I think they want whoever it is, Peters or Cunningham, to then hire who they want. And I think the most exciting thing for Commanders fans, I'd argue for the first time in maybe with Robert, there's a whole lot of revisionist history about who didn't want Robert and that it was all Dan. At the time, though, they were pretty into it. I think maybe the Shanahans didn't agree with how much they gave up in the trade, but people were into Robert. But like the last time you had true consensus between owner, GM, head coach on a quarterback selection is probably Jason Campbell when Joe Gibbs was here. I think the opportunity here to have owner, football boss, head coach all on board with the number 2 overall pick and taking a new quarterback and setting this franchise in a new direction, whether it's good or bad, at least is the right path. Like, that's what functional teams do, and I think that's the most exciting thing.
No doubt about it. All right, JP Finlay, breaking news all the time on Twitter in between hosting the radio show that he hosts 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on 106.7 The Fan. Of course, you can listen to that like you can listen to us on the free Odyssey app. Also on your television on NBC4, possibly with Michael Phillips tonight. What kind of treat are we in for there?
That is going to air Sunday in Sports Final.
Okay.
But yeah, we did that. And dude, shout out to Hoffman. I don't know that everybody knows this, but Hoff always tries to be super helpful in a radio station full of people that mostly try to like give you rabbit ears when you're trying to get something done. And I appreciate that, Hoff.
You're welcome. I'm glad that you got your the rabbit ears adjusted today to get your Wi-Fi working. We don't have to go into the full story, but like I'm glad it worked out for you.
Indeed. Well, I will see you before then, but I am excited for February 2nd.
Now that you know what it is.
Do I remember correct? You're not a big drinker, right?
No, definitely not. Not now.
Give me a ride home.
I'll have to see. I'll put it this way. Yeah, no, you definitely shouldn't drive. We will make sure you get home, whether I do that. I might have to, considering the shenanigans of that night. I'm not like completely sober, and that might be a night where I partake for my own sanity.
We might even get Hoffman Ubering. This is gonna be a heck of a night.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, we'll go that crazy, but yeah, we'll play it by ear, you know. We'll just all willy nilly.
Tell Russell if he wants to get tanked, he can sleep in my basement. I don't know if my wife agrees to that, but I'm just going to throw it out there.
I'm going to wait and not tell him that until you have approval from your wife, and you're going to thank me for that later. All right, thanks, JP. See you, buddy. That is JP Finlay with us here on the Team 980. Vic, did it feel like there was a half-second delay in JP's phone that entire interview?
It felt like that.
I just sometimes wonder if JP's phone is loading or JP is loading.
I felt like there was a half-second delay when I was talking to him off air too. So
yeah,
I think it's his phone.
I think it's his phone. I mean, JP's a thoughtful guy.
Yeah.
He just maybe sometimes he's kind of get the thoughts together. Mm-hmm. But I did feel like there was a bit of a delay in the phone. We've had terrible phone luck for Not My Beat this week. We had a bad phone connection yesterday. We got JP's phone on a slight delay today. But you want to know what? We're tough. We're battle hardened. We just keep riding through. Vic is a man of few words today. But
I was on a half-second delay.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.